Georgia exists in an absolutely gorgeous part of the world. Unfortunately, it also sits at the world's worst crossroads. And this has meant that the country has been invaded and taken over countless times as empires march back and forth between Asia and Europe. But Georgia, unlike those same conquering empires, has risen up time after time, regaining its independence. So why has Georgia been invaded so many times throughout history? And what does this tell us about Georgia's current geopolitical issues today? The country of Georgia, nestled at the crossroads of Eastern Europe and Western Asia, has a truly stunning physical geography that unfortunately has also ensured that it gets invaded time after time. Situated on the southern flanks of the Caucasus Mountains, Georgia is bordered by Russia to the north, Turkey and Armenia to the south, Azerbaijan to the southeast, and the Black Sea to the west. This unique geographic position places Georgia at the juncture of several major climatic and political spheres. The Caucasus Mountains, one of the most prominent features of Georgia's physical geography, dominate the northern part of the country. These mountains, including the Greater Caucasus Range, act as a natural barrier separating Europe and Asia. Mount Shkara, Georgia's highest peak, rises to an incredible 5,193 meters and is part of the Greater Caucasus Range. This mountainous region is characterized by steep slopes, deep valleys, and dramatic gorges, creating breathtaking scenery and providing habitat for a variety of wildlife, including the endangered Caucasian leopard and East Caucasian tahr. To the south of the Greater Caucasus, the Lesser Caucasus Range stretches along Georgia's southern borders. Although not as high as the Greater Caucasus, this range still features impressive peaks such as Mount Didi Abuli and Mount Samsari. The Lesser Caucasus is known for its volcanic origin, resulting in a landscape dotted with ancient volcano cones, lava plateaus, and mineral springs. Georgia's lowland region along the western coast by the Black Sea, also known as the Caucasus Lowland, is one of the few regions of Georgia that isn't dominated by mountains. The Caucasus Lowland is characterized by its humid subtropical climate, with warm temperatures and abundant rainfall, supporting lush forests and fertile soils. This area is crucial for agriculture, producing a variety of crops including tea, citrus fruits, and hazelnuts. The proximity to the Black Sea also influences the climate, moderating temperatures and contributing to the region's biodiversity. The eastern part of Georgia, particularly the region of Kakheti, is known for its fertile valleys and rolling hills. This area benefits from a semi-arid climate, making it ideal for viticulture. This is perhaps not as well known as France, but Georgia is one of the oldest wine-producing regions in the world, with a history of winemaking that dates back over 8,000 years. The Alizani and the Iori River valleys in Kakheti are particularly renowned for their vineyards and wine production. Georgia's river system plays a vital role in its physical geography. The Kura River, the longest river in the country, flows from the Caucasus Mountains in Turkey through Georgia and into Azerbaijan, where it eventually empties into the Caspian Sea. The river and its tributaries, including the Aragvi and the Terek, provide essential water resources for agriculture, industry, and hydroelectric power generation. Additionally, the numerous gorges and canyons carved by these rivers add to the country's dramatic landscapes. The diverse climates and landscapes of Georgia create a variety of ecosystems, from alpine meadows and coniferous forests in the high mountains to semi-desert areas in the eastern parts of the country. This ecological diversity supports a wide range of flora and fauna, some of which are unique to the region. The Barzomi-Karagali National Park, one of the largest protected areas in Europe, is home to many endemic species and shows the country's commitment to preserving its natural heritage. Georgia's physical geography is not only a source of natural beauty, but also a critical factor in its cultural and historic development. The challenging terrain of the Caucasus has historically provided protection from invasions, allowing distinct cultural and linguistic groups to thrive in relative isolation. But at the same time, Georgia has found itself, time after time, at the unfortunate side of a much larger empire's military. In terms of natural beauty, Georgia is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated countries in the world. But historically, this area has been very popular to whichever empire was currently ascending. And there's a very strong geographic reason for this. The history of Georgia is one of resilience and perseverance, marked by its strategic location at the crossroads of many different empires over thousands of years. This geographic positioning has subjected the country to countless invasions and occupations, yet Georgia has continually emerged as a distinct and independent nation, demonstrating remarkable fortitude. And while many countries can lay the claim to being the most invaded throughout history, Georgia is certainly up there. In ancient times, Georgia found itself caught between the expansive Roman and Persian empires. Between the years 600 and 150 BCE, the Kingdom of Iberia and the Kingdom of Colchis had developed as significant entities, successfully repelling invasions by the Median Empire to the southeast. But eventually, the Roman Empire grew in the west. Its expansive armies would march eastward towards the Caucasus. While the Kingdom of Iberia would never fully submit or yield to direct Roman control, the Kingdom of Colchis would be fully absorbed into the empire and renamed as the Roman province of Lazikum. As the Roman Empire gradually waned in power and influence, the Persian Empire, particularly under the Sassanid dynasty, would seek control over the region that would become Georgia due to its strategic importance. And over the centuries, the Georgians faced numerous Persian invasions and periods of vassalage. However, Georgian resilience was epitomized by figures such as King Vakhtang I, who fought to maintain Georgian sovereignty in the 5th century Common Era. His efforts laid the groundwork for future resistance against external domination. For hundreds of years, the region was effectively split between the Byzantine Empire and the Persian Empire, until the entire region came under Arab rule, who would maintain some form of control in the region until the restoration of Georgia in the year 888, though the Emirate of Tbilisi would last until the year 1122. The arrival of the Seljuk Turks in the 11th century marked a new era of conflict and invasions. The Seljuks aimed to expand their empire into the Caucasus, resulting in significant devastation and upheaval. Nevertheless, the Georgian monarchs, particularly King David IV, also known as David the Builder, spearheaded a period of revival. Between 1103 and 1105, David IV successfully expelled the Seljuks and established a strong, unified Georgian state, initiating a golden age marked by cultural and economic prosperity. But once again, at the crossroads of the known world, another empire would begin its march. In the 1220s, the Mongol Empire would arrive, and while a combined Georgian and Armenian force would put up staunch resistance, eventually the area would fall in 1236. The Mongol Empire, with its relentless expansion, subjected Georgia to vassalage and heavy tribute. Despite this, the Georgian kings and queens, such as Queen Tamar's successors, managed to retain a semblance of autonomy. The persistent Georgian resistance eventually led to the weakening of Mongol control, allowing the country to experience brief periods of independence. The late medieval period saw the rise of the Ottoman and Safavid empires, both vying for control over the strategically vital Georgian territories. The Ottomans, advancing from the west, and the Safavids from the east, turned Georgia into a battleground. Despite the continuous strife, the Georgian nobility, particularly in the regions of Kartli and Kakheti, engaged in diplomatic maneuvers and armed resistance to safeguard their autonomy. In 1616, the Safavids dispatched troops to Georgia aiming to suppress the Georgian revolt in Tbilisi. However, the Safavid soldiers met heavy resistance, and the Georgians managed to push the troops back. Enraged, the Safavid Shah ordered a punitive massacre, resulting in the deaths of an estimated 130,000 to 200,000 people. By the late 18th century, King Erekle II of Kartli Kakheti sought Russian protection against Persian aggression, leading to an era of Russian influence, something that would work out well in the beginning, but turned sour as the decades dragged on. On January 8, 1801, Russia formally annexed Georgia into its empire. Despite losing its sovereignty, the Georgian spirit of resistance persisted. The national movement gained momentum, leading to the brief establishment of the Democratic Republic of Georgia in 1918, following the collapse of the Russian Empire. However, this independence was short-lived as Soviet forces invaded in 1921, once again incorporating Georgia into a larger empire, this time known as the Soviet Union. Under Soviet rule, Georgia experienced significant political repression, but it also saw industrialization and modernization. The Georgian national identity remained strong, and dissident movements emerged, particularly in the latter half of the 1900s. The drive for independence culminated in the late 1980s and early 1990s as the Soviet Union began to disintegrate. On April 9, 1991, Georgia declared its independence, once again rising as a sovereign nation. Throughout its history, Georgia has consistently demonstrated an extraordinary capacity to rise from the ashes of conquest and occupation. Whether facing the might of the Roman, Persian, Seljuk, Mongol, Ottoman, or Russian empires, Georgia's unique perseverance has allowed it to reclaim its independence time and again. And while the small country has endured plenty of hardship during these invasions, it can stand tall and look over the buried and forgotten remains of many empires who no longer exist in any form today. But as has happened in the past, Georgia's future is getting murkier as time goes by. Georgia's sovereignty issues today are deeply rooted in its complex relationship with Russia and the contentious regions of Abkhazia and South Ossetia. These regions, which declared independence from Georgia in the early 1990s, remain at the heart of ongoing territorial disputes that have drawn international attention due to parallels with the situation in Ukraine before Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. The dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991 set the stage for the initial conflicts. Both Abkhazia and South Ossetia, leveraging the chaotic transition period, declared independence from Georgia. The ensuing wars in the early 1990s resulted in significant casualties and displacement, with Abkhazia and South Ossetia establishing de facto independence backed by Russian military support. Despite these regions being internationally recognized as part of Georgia, Russia's involvement has solidified their autonomous status, leaving Georgia's territorial integrity in a precarious state. But it would be the Russo-Georgian War of August 2008 that would mark a significant escalation in tensions for the region. Triggered by the Georgian military operation in South Ossetia, the conflict quickly drew in Russian forces. The brief but intense war ended with Russia recognizing Abkhazia and South Ossetia as independent states, a move condemned by the international community, but one that has entrenched Russian influence in these regions. The war underscored the volatility of the situation and highlighted the challenges Georgia faces in asserting its sovereignty against a powerful neighbor. In the aftermath of the war, Russia has continued to solidify its presence in Abkhazia and South Ossetia through military bases, borderization processes, and economic support. The so-called borderization involves the gradual shifting of the administrative boundary lines deeper into Georgian territory, effectively annexing more land. This has not only disrupted the lives of local communities, but has also violated Georgia's territorial sovereignty. The situation in Georgia mirrors similar events in Ukraine, particularly the annexation of Crimea by Russia in 2014 and the support for separatist movements in eastern Ukraine. Both instances demonstrate Russia's strategic use of military force and political influence to destabilize neighboring countries and assert its dominance. In both Georgia and Ukraine, these actions have led to significant international condemnation and sanctions against Russia. Yet the effectiveness of such measures remains limited in reversing the occupations. These issues with Russia has led to Georgia's aspirations to join NATO and the European Union, further complicating its sovereignty issues. These ambitions have been met with strong opposition from Russia, which perceives them as a threat to its sphere of influence. The prospect of NATO expansion is a particular sticking point, as Russia has consistently opposed the inclusion of former Soviet states into the alliance. And this is where things get murky and complicated for Georgia. Since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine by Russia, an estimated 1.5 million Russian citizens have moved into the country, likely to avoid conscription into the military. But Georgia only has about 3.7 million people of its own, which means that Russian citizens now comprise nearly 30% of the Georgian population if those Russians have stuck around. And during a time when Russia is using large populations of ethnic Russians as an excuse to invade and take over land of nearby countries, that becomes quite dangerous. Today, during a time when many Georgians still highly value being part of the European Union, the country's political sphere seems intent on leaning back into Russian influence. In May 2024, the country's parliament overrode a presidential veto on a law that would classify various non-governmental organizations as foreign agents, the same NGOs that routinely spotlight issues of corruption within the ruling party. And this law has also cooled relations and negotiations with the European Union, effectively halting that process. All this is to say, as Russia continues its illegal invasion of Ukraine and continues to push its influence into Georgia, it's starting to feel like Georgia may have yet another invasion on its hands. That might not actually be the case, but it could be. But if it does, and if Georgia does fall back into Russian control, the independent nature and spirit of Georgia will likely rise again, just as it has countless times before today. Georgia has always been located at the crossroads of Asia and Europe, and that means it has and likely will continue to be a source of conflict as other countries rise and fall over the years. But if there's one thing you can count on in this world, it's that Georgia will eventually pick up where it left off and continue to exist. I don't have any good maps of Georgia over on my map store, which is a shame because I'm like totally obsessed with the country right now. But if you want to support me and could use a good map for your wall, then go check out my store. This was a really fun but different kind of episode, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to watch another video, check one out. And you can listen to my other podcast right here. Thanks for watching. See you next time.